Our learning objective for this lesson is to try to solve some exam questions that involve straight lines. Okay, so we'll start with this very simple one where we have two coordinates and the question clearly says work out the coordinate of the midpoint. Now, when you've been given a grid to work with, you have options really. You can decide to use the grid to help you, or you can decide to use calculation. So we'll start off with a fairly simple method of using the grid. As we have clearly been given, this coordinate for A is 1, 4, and the one for B is 8, 2. So if you want to work out the midpoint, what we want to do is to consider each of them on their respective axes. And then we're going to try to work our way halfway down each axis. So for example, on the x-axis, okay, so let's see there. Now, when we consider the x coordinates, our x coordinates for A is 1. So it's moving from 1 to 8. Okay, so that will be a distance of about 7. Therefore, halfway between that will be 3.5. Okay, so we count our way 3.5 along the x-axis. So we go 1, 2, 3, and then halfway. So it means the line we're interested in is going to be something here. We do the same thing on the y-axis. As far as the y coordinates of the respective points are concerned, we're going from 2 to 4. Okay, that gives us a distance of about 2. Therefore, halfway between there will be 1. Okay, so if we count 1, that gives us roughly that our midpoint should be there. So that you would have 4.5 and 3 as your midpoint. Okay, make sure you put your answer on the answer line. Now, if you wanted to use calculations to do this, you would be using the formula of the midpoint to be x1 add x2, and then you halve that, and then y1 add y2, and you halve that as well. So label your giving points. It doesn't matter which one is your x1 and x2. I'm going to use this. So this will be my x1, y1 for the A, and then x2, y2 for B. So all you do is just substitute it. Okay, right, so I'm going to have 1 add 8 divided by 2, and then 4 add 2 divided by 2. And as you can see, you have 9 over 2, and then you've got 6 over 2, which both simplify to 4.5 and 3. So that is done. The second part of the question says we should use Pythagoras. Now, once the question has requested a particular principle, just try and stick to that, okay? So we want to use Pythagoras to work out the length of AB. Now, you would want to recall the Pythagoras principle. Put simply, with the length of AB will be what? Square root of x2 minus x1 plus y2 minus y1 squared. Okay, so the same x1, x2 principle that you used in the previous section, you will be borrowing that in this section. Okay, so we'll be doing this. Our x2 we chose to be the B coordinate, so we're going to do 8 minus 1 this time squared plus 2 minus 4 squared. That gives us 8 minus 1, 7 squared, add negative 2 squared, 49 add 4, square root of 53. Now, square root of 53, this will be an exact value. Okay, so in case the question asks for exact value, you will just leave your answer in the surd form, because you cannot find an more exact answer than the surd form of it, square root of 53. But this particular question says we should write it to 3 significant figures. So on your calculator, just press the SD button after you've gotten to this section, and it should give you 7.280109889. Now always write down as many decimal places as possible. I will encourage 4 or 5 initially before you write down the approximated value. Okay, so that will be 7.28 to 3 significant figures. Okay, so that is the first exam type problem involving coordinates, finding midpoint, and then the length of a line. Right, our next question here, we haven't been given a graph at all. All right, so we have our 2 coordinates to work with. What you want to do is to give yourself a picture, because it always helps if you have a picture to refer to. So we're going to draw our own line segment. We'll call one section A, we'll call one section B. Okay, we'll write our coordinates next to them. But we are told that this line is called L. Okay, so let's name it L. The second part of the question is asking us, is the line with coordinate 2y equals 3x minus 4 perpendicular to L? Now, what have we learned already? We already know, looking at the general equation of a straight line, y equals mx plus c, for 2 lines to be perpendicular, okay, they are related by means of their gradient m. Okay, so if we have one line with gradient m, okay, another line perpendicular to it would have to have the gradient of -1 over m. In other words, the product of both gradients should give us -1. So in solving this particular question, that is what we want to achieve. So we're going to concentrate on the gradient of both lines and then use this principle, the product of the gradient, and see if we get -1. Okay, right. So let's start with the first one, the gradient for L. You would need to also recall that the gradient m is given by y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so we'll just substitute our values very simply. -1 minus 3, 4 minus 1. Okay, right. Remember, you can choose whichever is your x1 and x2 and y1 and y2. Okay, right. Therefore, what do we have? We have -4 over 3 as the gradient of L. Okay, now as you can see, the second equation is not in this form yet, so it will be difficult for us to compare the gradients. So we'll need to rewrite this. So rearrange the second equation so that you've got that form, y equals mx plus c. So we will be dividing through by 2. Okay, so that leaves us with y equals 3 over 2x minus 2. Okay, now we have both gradients. Shall we circle them? Let me call it m1 for the first one, and then the gradient m2 for the next one, which is 3 over 2. Shall we try to find their product? Okay, so m1 times m2 equals -4 over 3 times 3 over 2. Simplify. what do we actually obtain? -2. Now, since that is -2 and not a -1, we clearly know that they are not perpendicular. Hence, we will say, and you need to say this in a full sentence to get your full marks. The communication mark, examiners are very strict on that. So we want to then say that the equation 2y equals 3x minus 4 is not perpendicular to line L. Okay, fairly straightforward. Just make sure you get your picture ready at the start, because it helps if you can see what is happening. It aids the brain to process your calculations a little bit quicker. Also, just make sure you have a strategy in the sense that what you're looking for is the fact that if they're perpendicular, the product of their gradients should give you -1. Okay, so if we don't get that happening, then we know that it's not perpendicular. Okay. Yeah, what else do I need to add? I think that's it. If you enjoyed this lesson, if you have any questions, please leave feedback for me. Thank you very much.